My name is Rebecca Daniel. I am 83 years old. I live in a quiet retirement community in Cedar Hollow, Ohio. The houses here all look the same. Small porches, white fences, neatly cut grass. On most evenings, you will find me sitting in my rocking chair, wrapped in a faded blue shawl, watching the sun fall behind the maple trees. People see an old woman with silver hair and soft hands. They do not see the girl I used to be. They do not see the night I lost my first child. Deep breath. Softly. I was 19 when I got pregnant for the first time. I was married to a man named Wallace Whitmore. He was tall, charming, a mechanic everyone in our small town of Briar Glen respected. When we got married, people said I was lucky. They said Wallace was a hard worker, provider. They did not know what happened behind closed doors. The first time he hit me, I was only 2 months pregnant. I remember that day clearly. I had burned the pot roast. The smoke alarm screamed. Wallace came home early and found the kitchen full of smoke. He did not shout at first. He just stared at me with those cold gray eyes. Then his hand came out of nowhere. My head snapped to the side. I tasted blood. Deep breath. Softly. I told myself it was stress. I told myself he did not mean it. I told myself I should have watched the oven better. But it did not stop. Every time I spoke too loud. Every time dinner was late. Every time I asked for money for baby clothes. His fists answered me. And I carried that baby inside me like a fragile secret. I would lie awake at night with my hand over my stomach, whispering promises. I will protect you. I will be strong for you. But I was not strong enough. One winter evening when I was nearly 5 months along, Wallace came home angry. His truck had broken down. He had been drinking. Snow clung to his boots as he stormed inside. He accused me of flirting with the mailman. I had not. He shoved me against the kitchen table. The edge dug into my lower back. I begged him to stop. I told him about the baby. He did not care. His boot struck my stomach. Once. 3 times. The pain was sharp at first. Then it turned into something deeper. A tearing inside me. Fell to the floor. I remember the smell of whiskey. The sound of the clock ticking. The snow still falling outside the window. And then I felt something warm between my legs. Blood. Deep breath. Softly. I lost my baby that night. At the hospital, the nurse would not look me in the eye. The doctor asked if I had fallen. Wallace answered for me. She slipped on the ice. I stayed quiet. Because back then, women like me stayed quiet. When I woke up in the hospital bed alone, my stomach felt empty. Not just physically, empty in my soul. That was the night something inside me broke. But it was also the night something else was born. Something Wallace never saw coming. Before I go on, I need to ask you something. If you believe stories like mine deserve to be heard, take a moment right now and subscribe to this channel. Like this video so more people can find it. Turn on your notifications so you never miss another powerful story of survival and strength. And please tell me in the comments which part of this country you are watching from. Are you in Texas, California, Florida, New York? Let me know. I want to know who is here with me tonight. Deep breath. Softly. After I left the hospital, Wallace acted like nothing happened. He bought me flowers. Yellow daisies. My least favorite. He said we could try again. He said I should be grateful he stayed with me. Grateful. For years, I carried guilt like a heavy coat. I thought maybe if I had been quieter, sweeter, smaller, my baby would still be alive. But here is what I know now at 83. It was never my fault. That night was not just about a lost pregnancy. It was the beginning of a war. A war Wallace thought he would always win. He did not know that the scared 19-year-old girl he kicked on a kitchen floor would one day become the woman who would bring him to his knees. And he certainly did not know that 50 years later, in a courtroom packed with strangers, I would finally speak the truth. Deep breath. Softly. But to understand how I got from that bloody kitchen floor to that courtroom, you have to understand what happened in the years between. You have to understand the secrets, the betrayal, the revenge that was not revenge at all. It was justice, and justice has a long memory. In the next chapter, I will take you back to the farm outside Briar Glen. To the night I realized Wallace was hiding something far worse than his temper. Something that would change everything. And when I found out, I had a choice. Stay silent forever, or start planning my escape. What I chose will shock you. And Wallace never saw it coming. The farm sat 3 miles outside Briar Glen, hidden behind tall cornfields and a rusted iron gate that screeched every time it opened. That gate was the sound of isolation. When Wallace brought me there after the hospital, he said it would be good for us. Fresh air. Eighth. Place to start over. Start over. Deep breath. Softly. The house was old. White paint peeling. Wooden floors that groaned at night like they were whispering secrets. The nearest neighbor was a mile away. No sidewalks. No streetlights. No one to hear if I screamed. That was not an accident. Wallace liked control. He liked knowing I had nowhere to run. At 19, I did not have my own bank account. My parents had passed away when I was 16. I had no brothers, no sisters, just Wallace. And he reminded me of that every chance he got. You have nobody but me, Becky. He would say it gently, almost sweet. That was the scariest part. 'Cause sometimes he could be kind. He would fix the porch swing. Bring home apple pie from Miller's Diner. Hold my hand in church on Sundays like we were the perfect couple. And I would almost believe it. But at night, when the doors were locked and the world was dark, the kindness disappeared. After I lost the baby, something inside Wallace changed. He watched me differently. Like he blamed me. He stopped touching me for weeks. Then one night, he came into the bedroom smelling like motor oil and beer. He stood at the edge of the bed, staring down at me. "You owe me another child," he said. My heart pounded so loud I thought he could hear it. I whispered, "I need time." He did not care about time. He only cared about ownership. Deep breath. Softly. Months passed. Bruises came and faded. I learned how to hide them with long sleeves. I learned how to smile in public. I learned how to move quietly so the floorboards would not alert him when I stepped away. But then I started noticing something strange. Wallace was leaving the farm late at night. He would say he had extra work at the garage. But sometimes he would come home smelling like perfume. Not mine. Something floral and sharp. One evening I saw lipstick on his collar. Bright red. I stood in the kitchen holding his shirt in my hands. My fingers trembled. When he walked in, I asked him about it. That was my mistake. He did not yell at first. He laughed. "You think I would cheat on you, Rebecca?" The way he said my full name meant danger. I said nothing. He stepped closer. "Maybe if you had given me a son," he whispered, "maybe I would not have to look elsewhere." The words cut deeper than his fists ever did. Because he was not just blaming me for losing the baby. He was punishing me for it. That night, he shoved me into the pantry so hard that canned goods fell from the shelves. A jar shattered near my feet. I slid down against the wall and stayed there long after he left the house again. That was when I realized something. Wallace did not see me as a wife. He saw me as property that had failed him. Deep breath. Softly. The next Sunday at church, I noticed a woman sitting 3 pews ahead of us. Her name was Delilah Hargrove. She was new in town. Late 20s. Long auburn hair. Always dressed perfectly. Wallace could not stop looking at her. And she looked back. That was when the puzzle pieces began to fit. The late nights. Perfume. The lipstick. But what I did not know yet was that Delilah was not just a secret affair. She was part of something much bigger. 2 weeks later I found proof. I had been cleaning Wallace's truck when I saw an envelope shoved under the seat. It was thick, heavy. Inside were documents, life insurance papers. My name was on them. My stomach tightened. The policy was new, only 3 weeks old. And the payout amount was enough to buy that farm twice over. I felt the world tilt. Why would Wallace take out a life insurance policy on me now? After I had already lost the baby. After he had started seeing Delilah. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. There was a signature at the bottom. But I had never signed it. Deep breath. Softly. That was the moment fear turned into something else. Awareness. Wallace was not just angry. He was planning. I began watching him the way he watched me. I listened when he thought I was asleep. I noticed when he whispered on the phone outside. One night I heard him say, "It will be handled soon." The word echoed in my mind like a warning bell. For the first time since I lost my baby, I stopped thinking like a victim. I started thinking like a survivor. If Wallace wanted me gone, I needed to move first. But how does a 19-year-old girl with no money and no family outsmart a man who controls everything? I found the answer in the most unexpected place. Old Mrs. Penrose. She lived at the edge of town. 80 years old. Widowed. Sharp as a needle. I used to bring her groceries once a week for a little extra cash Wallace did not know about. One afternoon, she looked at the bruise peeking out from under my sleeve. She did not ask if I fell. She said, "How long has he been hitting you?" The words knocked the air out of me. I burst into tears right there in her tiny kitchen. She listened. She did not interrupt. When I told her about the insurance policy, her eyes hardened. "Child," she said softly, "that man is not just cruel. He is dangerous." Deep breath. Softly. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small metal box. Inside was cash. Not much, but enough. "You need to start preparing," she said. Quietly. Carefully. "Do not let him know." That was the first time someone chose me. And something inside my chest that had been frozen for months began to thaw. But I did not know yet that Wallace was already 2 steps ahead. Because 3 nights later, I overheard something that made my blood run cold. He was not just planning to collect insurance money. He was planning to make it look like an accident. And the method he chose. It would have left no witnesses. And no second chances. What I heard through that cracked bedroom door would change everything. And it would force me to make a decision that would shape the rest of my life. In the next chapter, I will tell you what Wallace whispered into that phone. And why I realized I had only days to save myself. The night I heard the truth, the wind was howling across the fields. Corn stalks scraped against the house like dry bones. The windows rattled. The sky was heavy with storm clouds. Wallace thought I was asleep. I lay in our bed, eyes closed, breathing slow and even. I had learned to pretend well. Survival teaches you that. Around midnight, he slipped out of bed. I heard the soft click of the bedroom door. Deep breath. Softly. I waited 10 seconds. Then 20. Then I slid out of bed and crept down the hallway. The house was dark except for the faint yellow glow from the kitchen. I stopped just before the corner. My heart beat so loud I was afraid it would give me away. Wallace stood near the back door, phone pressed to his ear. "Yes," he said in a low voice. "Saturday night. The storm's supposed to be bad. No one will question it." Silence. Then he laughed. She's scared of the basement anyway. If I tell her the generator needs checking, she'll go. My body went cold. The basement. Our basement had old wiring. A temperamental furnace. And after heavy rain, sometimes water pooled near the back wall. An accident waiting to happen. He continued, it'll look like she slipped. Hit her head. With the insurance in place, I'll be set. We can start fresh. Delilah. Deep breath. Softly. My knees nearly buckled. He was not bluffing. He was planning my death like he was planning a grocery list. Saturday night. That gave me 4 days. I slipped back into bed before he returned. When he climbed in beside me, he wrapped his arm around my waist like a loving husband. I stared into the darkness. 4 days. The next morning, he kissed my forehead before leaving for work. You feeling better these days, Becky? He nodded. Inside, I was already building a plan. First, I went to see Mrs. Penrose. She did not look surprised when I told her. Some men think they own the world, she said. But they forget the world has eyes. She handed me a small tape recorder. It was old. Heavy. The kind reporters used in the 70s. If he talks again, record it. My hands trembled as I took it. Then she did something I did not expect. She drove me to the bank. That was the first time I opened an account in my own name. Rebecca Daniel. Just seeing my name alone on paper felt like a quiet rebellion. Deep breath. Softly. For the next 2 nights, I pretended everything was normal. I cooked dinner. I washed his clothes. I even laughed at one of his jokes. But every second I was watching. Waiting. On Thursday night he made another call. This time I was ready. I hid the recorder under the kitchen table earlier that day. When he stepped outside to the porch, I quietly opened the window just enough. The wind carried his words inside. Yes, Saturday. Around 10. I'll cut the power first. Make it look like the storm knocked it out. She'll panic. I'll tell her to check the breaker downstairs. Deep breath. Softly. He described it so calmly, like he was talking about fixing a tire. When he came back inside, I waited until he fell asleep. Then I retrieved the recorder. My hands shook as I pressed rewind. His voice filled the room. Cold. Clear. Confessing. Tears rolled down my face, but they were not weak tears. They were tears of proof. Friday morning I went back to Mrs. Penrose. We listened together. She did not speak until it ended. That's enough to save your life, she said. But I wanted more than survival. I wanted truth. I wanted him exposed. Saturday arrived faster than I expected. The sky was dark by noon. Thunder rolled in the distance. Wallace came home early. Storm's coming, he said casually. We better be ready. He nodded. My stomach twisted, but my face stayed calm. At 9:45 the lights flickered, then went out. Right on time. Wallace cursed loudly. Must be the lines, he said. Becky, can you check the breaker in the basement? There it was. The moment. Deep breath. Softly. I stood slowly. Okay, I said. I grabbed the flashlight. But before heading to the basement door, I turned. Wallace. He looked up. I know about the insurance policy. His face froze. And I know about Delilah. Silence filled the room like smoke. He laughed, but it sounded forced. You're being paranoid. I held up the tape recorder. And I know about Saturday night. The color drained from his face. For the first time since I had known him, Wallace Whitmore looked afraid. You've been spying on me, he whispered. No, I said quietly. I've been surviving you. Thunder cracked above us. He lunged toward me. Ran. Not to the basement. To the front door. But he was faster. His hand grabbed my arm. The flashlight fell and rolled across the floor. "You stupid girl," he hissed. "You think anyone will believe you?" I did not answer. Because at that exact moment, red and blue lights flashed through the windows. Wallace's grip loosened. His head turned toward the sound. Sheriff Colton Reeves stepped onto the porch. Mrs. Penrose had not just given me a recorder. She had called the police. Deep breath. Softly. Wallace tried to compose himself, but it was too late. The sheriff knocked firmly. When Wallace opened the door, he was smiling. "Evening, Sheriff. Power's out." The sheriff looked past him at me. "Ma'am," he said gently. "We received a concerning report." I stepped forward. My arm still hurt where Wallace grabbed it. "I have something you need to hear," I said. That was the night Wallace's plan collapsed. But justice is not instant. And evil does not surrender easily. What happened next would drag on for years. Courtrooms. Whispers in church pews. People choosing sides. And Delilah. She would not disappear quietly. In fact, what she did next would shock the entire town. And nearly cost me everything again. Because exposing Wallace was only the beginning. The real battle was just getting started. When Sheriff Colton Reeves listened to the recording, he did not speak for a long time. The storm raged outside. Rain slammed against the porch roof. Wallace stood stiff beside the kitchen table, his jaw tight, his eyes burning into me. Finally, the sheriff looked up. "Wallace," he said carefully, "I'm going to need you to come down to the station." Wallace laughed. "This is ridiculous. Just talk." A private conversation taken out of context. But his voice had lost its confidence. Deep breath. Softly. They did not arrest him that night. That was the hardest part. In Briar Glen, people did not like scandal. They liked neat stories. Clean reputations. Wallace was a respected mechanic. He fixed tractors for half the farms in the county. He sponsored the Little League team. I was just the quiet wife. The sheriff opened an investigation. That was all. Wallace came home the next afternoon. And when he walked through that door, the air shifted. "You embarrassed me," he said quietly. His voice was calm again. That calm terrified me more than shouting ever had. I packed a small suitcase that evening and went to stay with Mrs. Penrose. The farm no longer felt like a house. Felt like a trap that had failed. Within days, the town was whispering. At Miller's Diner, conversations stopped when I walked in. Church people avoided my eyes. Some believed me. Many did not. Delilah Hargrove did not hide anymore. She moved into Wallace's farmhouse the week after I left. She sat in my pew at church. She wore red lipstick. And she smiled at me like she had won. Deep breath. Softly. The sheriff gathered enough evidence to charge Wallace with conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud. When the official papers were filed, the town split in half. Some said I was brave. Others said I was dramatic. One woman whispered loud enough for me to hear. Maybe she made it up because he wanted someone younger. That cut deep. But I did not back down. Because I had the truth. And I had the recording. The trial began 6 months later in the county courthouse. I was 20 years old. I had never spoken in front of more than 5 people in my life. Now I had to tell a courtroom what my husband had done to me. When I took the stand, Wallace stared at me like he used to when he was deciding how hard to hit. But this time I did not look away. Deep breath. Softly. I told them about the pregnancy. The kicks. The blood on the kitchen floor. The insurance policy with my forged signature. The basement plan. Tape recorder. The jury listened. Some faces were shocked. Some were skeptical. Then the prosecutor played the recording. Wallace's voice filled the courtroom. Clear. Cold. Unmistakable. Saturday night. I'll cut the power first. I watched jurors glance at each other. I saw Delilah shift in her seat. Wallace's lawyer argued it was just frustration. Just words spoken in anger. But words can reveal intention. And intention matters. After 4 days of testimony, the jury reached a verdict. Guilty. Wallace Whitmore was sentenced to 8 years in state prison. Years. It did not feel like enough for the baby I lost. But it was something. It was. Deep breath. Softly. As deputies led him away, Wallace turned his head toward me. "This isn't over, Becky," he said. His voice was not loud. But it carried. I did not respond. I walked out of that courthouse alone. And for the first time in years, the air felt different. Not lighter. Just mine. I filed for divorce that same week. The judge granted it quickly, especially after the conviction. I received a portion of the farm's value and half of his savings. It was more money than I had ever seen. Mrs. Penrose hugged me when I handed her back every dollar she had given me. "You did the hard part," she said. "Now build something better." I moved to a small apartment in Cedar Hollow, Ohio. That was the beginning of my new life. But healing is not instant. At night I still heard boots on wooden floors. I still smelled whiskey. I still felt phantom pain in my stomach where my baby had once been. I started volunteering at a local women's shelter. The first time a bruised young woman walked through those doors, I saw my 19-year-old self. I sat with her. I told her she was not crazy. I told her it was not her fault. Those words healed me too. It was. Deep breath. Softly. Years passed. Wallace served 6 years and was released early for good behavior. He left Briar Glen immediately. Delilah did not stay. She moved on to another town, another man. I never saw either of them again. Or so I thought. At 30, I met a widower named Grant Hollis. He was quiet, gentle, school librarian. He asked before he touched my hand. That simple respect made me cry the first time. We married 2 years later. With Grant, love did not feel like fear. Felt like safety. We tried for children. But after the injuries I had suffered, doctors said it would be difficult. That was another grief. But not a defeat. We adopted a little girl named Marin. She had dark curls and a laugh that filled rooms. When I held her for the first time, I felt something mend inside me. Life did not return what I lost. Gave me something different. It was. Deep breath. Softly. Grant passed away peacefully when we were in our 70s. Marin grew into a strong woman. She gave me grandchildren who climb into my lap and ask about the old days. They know parts of my story. But not all of it. 'Cause some scars are private. Or so I believed. Until last year. Last year, at 82 years old, I received a letter in the mail. The return address made my hands tremble. Wallace Whitmore. He was dying. And he wanted to see me. It was. Deep breath. Softly. I stared at that letter for a long time. After 50 years. After prison. After silence. Why now? And what could he possibly have left to say? I held the envelope for nearly an hour before I opened it. My hands are older now. Veins raised. Skin thin like paper. But the trembling that ran through them that day felt exactly like it did when I was 19. Some fears do not age. It was. Deep breath. Softly. The return address was from Briar Glen Medical Center. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Rebecca. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm sick. Lung cancer. Stage 4. They say I don't have long. There's something you need to know. Something I never told anyone. If you want the truth, come see me. Wallace. That was all. No apology for the baby. No acknowledgement of the bruises. just a promise of truth. For 50 years, I had built a life far away from his shadow. Had a daughter, grandchildren, a peaceful home in Cedar Hollow. I had survived him. Why would I step back into that darkness? But curiosity is powerful. And truth unfinished can linger like a splinter under the skin. That night, I sat in my rocking chair and watched the sun sink behind the trees. The sky turned pink, then purple, then gray. Marin called just as the first stars appeared. "Mom, you sound quiet tonight," she said. I told her about the letter. There was a long silence on the other end. "You don't owe him anything," she said gently. "No." But something inside me whispered that this meeting was not about owing him. It was about closing something. It was. Deep breath. Softly. 2 days later, I drove back to Briar Glen for the first time in decades. The town looked smaller. The diner had new paint. The church sign was updated. The farm roads were paved now. But memory does not care about new asphalt. When I pulled into the hospital parking lot, my chest tightened. I walked slowly through the automatic doors. The smell of antiseptic hit me first. At the nurse's station, I said his name. Wallace Whitmore. Room 214. The hallway felt too long. Each step echoed. When I reached the door, I paused. Deep breath. Softly. Then I pushed it open. He was smaller than I remembered. Ray. Machines beeped softly beside his bed. Tubes ran from his nose. The man who once filled doorways now barely filled the mattress. His eyes opened when he heard me. Rebecca. My name sounded strange in his mouth after all these years. I did not step closer at first. "You look well," he said. I replied. Silence hung between us. "You said there was something I needed to know." He swallowed hard. There was more to that night. My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" He closed his eyes briefly, as if gathering strength. Delilah wasn't just an affair. She was pregnant. The room seemed to tilt. "Pregnant?" He coughed weakly. "She told me 2 weeks before. Before the storm plan. Said the baby was mine." Deep breath. Softly. My mind raced. "So that's why. The insurance policy. The urgency. You were going to replace me," I whispered. He did not deny it. "I was angry," he said. "You lost our child. Blamed you. I wanted a fresh start. I thought money would solve everything." His honesty was cold. Like he was describing someone else's sins. "What happened to her?" I asked quietly. He stared at the ceiling. "She lost it. 2 months after you left." The words hit me in an unexpected way. Lost it. Like I had. Different woman. Same grief. She left town after that. I never saw her again. Silence settled heavily. "So why tell me now?" He turned his head toward me. "'Cause there's more." My chest tightened again. What more could there be? He took a shaky breath. "The insurance policy wasn't just for money. It was debt. I owed men from Columbus. Gambling. If you had died, the payout would have covered everything." Cold realization crept up my spine. So it wasn't just selfishness. It was desperation. "You were going to kill me because you were in debt." He closed his eyes. Deep breath. Softly. I expected anger to flood me. Rage. Instead, I felt something else. Pity. He looked so small. So broken. But pity does not erase history. "Did you ever feel sorry for what you did to me?" I asked. "For the baby." Tears gathered at the corners of his eyes. Every day. I wanted to believe him. But remorse spoken at the edge of death is complicated. He reached weakly toward the bedside drawer. "There's something else." Inside was a folder. He handed it to me. Property deeds. Bank statements. A life insurance policy. My name was listed as beneficiary. "You don't have family," he said. "I never remarried. Never had kids. There's no one else. When I'm gone, it's yours." I stared at the papers. "I don't want your money." It's not about money, he whispered. It's about making something right. Deep breath. Toughly. For decades, I imagined revenge in small, secret ways. Him losing everything. Him begging. Him suffering. But standing there in that hospital room, revenge felt empty. He was already facing his ending. You can't undo what you did, I said. No. But maybe you can use it for something good. That sentence lingered. Use it for something good. When I left the hospital that afternoon, the sky was clear. No storm. No thunder. Just quiet sunlight. Wallace died 3 weeks later. And when the lawyer called, confirming the inheritance was real, I realized something unexpected. The man who once tried to take my life had just placed something powerful in my hands. Not just money. Opportunity. The question was not whether I would accept it. The question was what I would do with it. And when I made that decision, it would ripple far beyond me. When the lawyer finished reading Wallace's will, I sat very still in my living room. The clock ticked. A bird chirped outside my window. Life continued as if nothing monumental had just shifted. The amount he left me was more than I expected. The farm. His savings. The insurance payout. After taxes and fees, it was enough to change not just my life but many lives. Deep breath. Toughly. I did not sleep that night. Not because of fear. Because of responsibility. For 50 years, I had carried pain like a private stone in my pocket. Now that stone had turned into something else. Tool. The next morning I called Marin. Mom, are you sure about this? She asked after I told her my idea. You don't want to keep some for yourself. Smiled. I have everything I need. What I did not have at 19 was safety. And safety is what I wanted to build. Within 3 months, paperwork was filed. The Whitmore farm no longer carried Wallace's name. Carried mine. Rebecca Daniel. I stood at the edge of that land for the first time in decades. The barn leaned slightly to one side. The porch still creaked. The cornfields were gone, replaced by open grass. Memories tried to crawl up my spine. Deep breath. Toughly. But I did not come back as a frightened girl. I came back as a woman who had survived. With the inheritance, I partnered with a non-profit organization in Columbus that supported survivors of domestic violence. Together we designed a plan. The farmhouse would be renovated. The barn would be converted into counseling rooms and classrooms. Small cottages would be built along the property. Safe housing, legal assistance, job training, childcare, all in one place. I named it Haven Hollow. Not after Wallace. Not after the farm. After the feeling I wished I had known at 19. Construction took nearly a year. I visited often, watching walls go up where fear once lived. Workers laughed as they installed new windows. Bright ones. Strong locks. One afternoon, I stood in what used to be my old bedroom. The floorboards had been replaced. The walls painted soft blue. Closed my eyes. Deep breath. Toughly. This room once held silence and terror. Soon it would hold healing. The day Haven Hollow opened, reporters from nearby towns came to cover the story. They wanted to know why an 83-year-old widow had invested her inheritance into something so ambitious. I stood at the podium, hands steady. I did not share every detail. But I shared enough. I was once a young woman with nowhere to go, I said. If someone had given me a door to walk through, I would have walked sooner. This place is that door. Applause filled the air. But what mattered most was not the cameras. It was the first woman who arrived 2 weeks later. Her name was Talia. She was 22, bruised, holding a toddler on her hip. When she stepped onto the property, she looked around like she expected someone to tell her she did not belong. I walked toward her slowly. You're safe here, I said. Her shoulders dropped just a little. That small shift was everything. Deep breath. Awfully. Haven Hollow grew quickly. Volunteers signed up. Local businesses donated supplies. Even some of the same townspeople who once doubted me sent checks with handwritten apologies. Time changes people. Sometimes guilt does too. But not everyone was pleased. One afternoon I received an anonymous letter. You should have let the past stay buried. Some secrets bring trouble. The words were typed. No signature. I felt an old chill creep back in. Who would send this? Wallace had gambling debts decades ago. Were those men still alive? Or was it someone in town who resented what I had built? I handed the letter to Sheriff Colton Reeves. Yes, the same sheriff. Now older. Retired. But still protective. He promised to look into it. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of the old fear. But this time I was not alone. Haven Hollow was filled with staff, cameras, security systems, and most importantly, community. Weeks passed without incident. Until one evening, just after sunset, a black pickup truck parked at the edge of the property. The engine idled. I watched from my office window. A man stepped out. Broad shoulders. Gray hair. He looked familiar. Too familiar. Deep breath. Awfully. As he walked closer, recognition hit me like cold water. He had Wallace's eyes. But younger. Mid-40s maybe. He knocked on the office door. When I opened it, he studied my face carefully. Are you Rebecca Daniel? He asked. He swallowed. My name is Owen Whitmore. The world went silent. Whitmore. I felt my pulse in my ears. I'm Wallace's son, he said. But that's impossible, I whispered. He shook his head slowly. Not impossible. Delilah didn't lose the baby. She left town because she was scared. She raised me in Michigan. I only found out who my father was after she passed away last year. The ground beneath my feet felt unsteady. All these years. All that pain. And the child Wallace thought he lost had lived. Deep breath. Awfully. Why are you here? I asked carefully. He glanced around at the cottages. I read about this place. About what you did. I wanted to see the woman my mother always called stronger than any man she ever met. My throat tightened. He talked about me. Not with anger, he said quietly. With regret. She said you were both victims of the same man. Silence wrapped around us. What do you want from me, Owen? He looked me straight in the eyes. Nothing. But I think I want to help. I stared at him. The son of the man who tried to kill me. Standing on land that once held my terror. Offering support. Life has a strange sense of poetry. But poetry can carry both beauty and danger. Was this redemption? Or the beginning of another storm? For a long moment I did not move. Owen Whitmore stood in front of me, hands open, eyes steady. He did not look angry. He did not look entitled. He looked nervous. Deep breath. Awfully. I stepped aside. You can come in. He walked into my office slowly, as if afraid he might break something. His eyes scanned the walls. Photographs of women who had rebuilt their lives. Children laughing in the playground we built behind the barn. This used to be his farm, he said quietly. And now it's something better. He nodded. We sat across from each other. My mind kept searching his face for Wallace. The shape of the jaw. The slope of the nose. But there was something different in his eyes. There was softness. My mother never spoke much about him, Owen said. Just that he was charming at first. Then cruel. She left before I was born because she was scared of what he might do. A small ache formed in my chest. She told me she lost the baby. He shook his head. She told him that. She wanted him to disappear. She moved to Michigan and raised me alone. I absorbed that quietly. So Wallace believed he had lost both children. The irony was sharp. Did he ever know about you? I asked. Well, I found out who he was through paperwork after my mom died. I thought about contacting him. But then I saw he passed away months earlier. Silence settled between us again. And then I read about you, Owen continued. About the trial. About this place. I needed to see it for myself. Wait. He hesitated. Because I needed to know if I come from something evil. The question pierced deeper than I expected. Deep breath. Toughly. Blood carries history, I said slowly. But it does not carry destiny. He exhaled as if he had been holding that breath for years. What do you do, Owen? I'm a contractor. I renovate homes. I almost smiled at the strange symmetry. We could always use repairs around here, I said. His eyebrows lifted slightly. You'd let me help. I studied him carefully. You are not responsible for your father's sins. But you are responsible for your choices. He nodded. I choose to build, not destroy. Those words settled gently in the room. Over the next few weeks, Owen returned often. He fixed a faulty water heater, reinforced the fencing around the property, repaired the roof of one of the cottages. He worked quietly, respectfully. The women at Haven Hollow were cautious at first. A man with the name Whitmore walking the grounds stirred old fears. But Owen never pushed himself into spaces he wasn't invited. He kept his distance unless asked. One afternoon, Talia's little boy wandered toward the tool shed. Owen knelt down and gently redirected him away from sharp equipment. It was a small moment, but I noticed the care in his voice. Deep breath. Toughly. Still not everyone welcomed him. Sheriff Reeves, now retired but still watchful, came to visit after hearing about Owen. Be careful, Rebecca, he warned. Trauma can cloud judgment. I know, I replied. Trust is not blind. It's observed. So I observed. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I found Owen sitting on the old farmhouse steps alone. You're thinking hard, I said. He gave a small smile, just wondering what he would think of all this. I sat beside him. He would hate it. Because control was everything to him. And this place gives it back to the women who were once powerless. Owen stared at the horizon. I don't want to be anything like him. And don't be. Simple words. Hard practice. Deep breath. Toughly. Months passed. Haven Hollow expanded. Donations increased. Local news stations ran follow-up stories. Survivors shared testimonies. One night, we hosted a candlelight gathering for women who had rebuilt their lives. Talia stood at the front and spoke about her journey. About finding safety. About finding work. About believing in herself again. When she finished, she walked over and hugged me tightly. Thank you for giving me a second chance, she whispered. I felt tears rise. It was not revenge. It was restoration. Later that evening, Owen approached me. I've been offered a job out of state, he said. Bigger projects. More money. That's wonderful. He nodded slowly. But I don't think I'm going to take it. Why not? 'Cause I think I'm meant to build here. His voice carried quiet conviction. This land holds my father's worst intentions. I'd rather it hold my best efforts. Something inside me softened fully then. The son of the man who tried to kill me was choosing to protect what I had built from his father's ashes. Life does not always give neat endings. But sometimes it gives unexpected partners. Deep breath. Toughly. As Haven Hollow approached its 3rd anniversary, I was invited to speak at a state conference on domestic violence advocacy. Standing backstage, I thought about the 19-year-old girl on that kitchen floor. She could see me now. If she could see what pain had turned into. When I stepped onto that stage, applause filled the room. I told them about fear, about silence, about courage that begins as a whisper. And I told them something else. Sometimes justice is not about watching someone fall. It is about rising so high that their shadow can no longer reach you. The audience stood. But the most meaningful moment came afterward. A young woman approached me with trembling hands. "I heard your story online years ago," she said. "It gave me the strength to leave." Her words were quiet, but powerful. I realized then that my story no longer belonged only to me. It belonged to every woman who needed proof that survival can turn into victory. As I drove home that night, the road stretched peacefully ahead. But I could not shake a single thought. There was one final thing I had never done. I had never returned to the exact spot in the old house where I lost my baby. And I knew before my life ended, I needed to stand there one more time. Not in fear, but in closure. I chose a quiet morning. No reporters, no staff, no audience, just me. The farmhouse was empty that day. Renovations had long been completed, but we kept one small section of the original structure untouched. Not for nostalgia, not for drama, for truth. Deep breath. Softly. I walked through the hallway slowly. The air smelled like fresh wood and lemon polish now. Sunlight poured through the new windows Owen had installed last year. But at the end of the corridor, behind a simple white door, was the room. The kitchen. We had rebuilt it for Haven Hollow's communal cooking classes. Bright cabinets, long tables, stainless steel appliances. But beneath the polished floorboards was the same foundation. The same ground where I once fell. I stood in the center of the room. 83 years old. Alive. My hands rested lightly on the counter. Deep breath. Softly. Closed my eyes. And for a moment I could hear it. The clock ticking. The storm outside. The sharp crack of a hand across my face. The thud of boots against my stomach. The sound of glass breaking. The silence after. My chest tightened. Tears slipped down my cheeks. But this time I did not feel small. I did not feel broken. I felt witness. I opened my eyes. The room was bright, warm. No one could hurt me here. No one could silence me here. I whispered softly into the empty space. You did not win. The words did not carry anger. They carried fact. Deep breath. Softly. A memory surfaced unexpectedly. Not of Wallace. Not of fear. But of the tiny life I once carried. 5 months. I had never given that baby a name. Back then, grief was something you swallowed and hid. But standing in that room, I realized something important. That child mattered. That child existed. And even though their life was brief, it changed the course of mine. If I had not lost that baby, would I have ever found the strength to fight back? Would I have ever exposed Wallace? Would Haven Hollow exist? I placed my hand gently over my stomach. After all these years, the ache there felt different. Not sharp, not raw, just part of my story. Deep breath. Softly. The door creaked open behind me. Turned. Owen stood there. I hope it's okay I came in, he said quietly. It is. He stepped inside and looked around. I know what happened here, he said softly. I read the court transcripts. He nodded. It's strange standing in a place where someone once planned harm, he continued. And seeing it filled with light. That's the point, I replied. We stood side by side in silence. Then he said something I did not expect. I used to hate him. Your father. Even without knowing everything, I sensed something was wrong. My mother carried fear in her bones. I think she always worried he would find us. I swallowed. Fear travels quietly through generations. But so does strength. Owen looked at me carefully. Do you ever wish you could go back and change it? The question hung in the air. Deep breath. Softly. When I was younger, I wished that every day, I said. I wished I had run sooner. I wished I had spoken louder. I wished I had saved my baby. Now I understand that surviving it shaped me into who I became. He nodded slowly. I'm glad you survived, he said. Am I? We walked out of the kitchen together. Outside, women were tending to the small community garden we built where cornfields once grew. Children's laughter floated through the air. Life layered over pain. Hope planted over harm. Deep breath. Softly. That evening I sat on the porch alone. The same porch where Wallace once stood plotting my death. The sky turned orange and gold. I thought about forgiveness. People often ask if I forgave him. The truth is complicated. Forgiveness is not pretending something did not happen. It is choosing not to let it poison what remains. I did not forgive Wallace because he deserved it. I forgave so I could breathe freely. And I could breathe deeply now. Deep breath. Softly. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not sadness. Completion. The scared 19-year-old girl. The determined young woman in the courtroom. The mother. The widow. The founder. All versions of me stood together in that moment. And none of them were ashamed anymore. But there was still one final chapter left in my story. One final moment that would tie everything together in a way even I did not expect. Because the following week, I received an invitation. A national foundation wanted to honor Haven Hollow with an award for community impact. They asked me to speak. To tell the full story. On a stage much bigger than Briar Glen. And for the first time I considered telling everything. The pregnancy. The violence. The basement plan. The inheritance. All of it. Not for sympathy. But for truth. Because silence protects the wrong people. And my voice, even at 83, still carried power. Deep breath. Softly. The invitation arrived on heavy cream paper. The National Alliance for Family Safety Annual Impact Summit. Chicago, Illinois. They wanted to honor Haven Hollow for outstanding community transformation. And they wanted me to speak. Deep breath. Softly. At 83, I no longer chase stages. But this felt different. This was not about applause. It was about amplification. Marin insisted on flying with me. She held my hand as we walked through O'Hare Airport like I once held hers when she was small. You don't have to tell everything, she reminded me gently. No. But I might. The hotel ballroom was enormous. Crystal chandeliers. Round tables dressed in white linen. Hundreds of advocates, counselors, lawmakers, and survivors filled the seats. When my name was announced, the applause was warm. But my heart was steady. I walked slowly to the podium. Deep breath. Softly. My name is Rebecca Daniel. I am 83 years old. A few soft laughs of admiration rippled through the crowd. Smiled. When I was 19, I believed survival meant staying quiet. The room stilled. I told them about Briar Glen. About the charming mechanic. About the first slap. I did not rush. I did not dramatize. I simply spoke truth. I described the night I lost my baby. The storm. The basement plan. Tape recorder. Gasps moved through the audience like wind. I saw women in the crowd nodding, some with tears in their eyes. I spoke about the courtroom. The verdict. The years of rebuilding. Then I told them about the letter from the hospital. About the inheritance. About turning blood money into Haven Hollow. Deep breath. Softly. Pain can either rot inside you, I said, or you can plant it. And when you plant it, sometimes it grows into shelter. Silence. Then applause. Not loud, not explosive, but deep. I looked out across that ballroom and saw something powerful. Recognition. After the speech, dozens of women approached me. One said she had stayed in an abusive marriage for 20 years. Another said she left last month. A young girl, maybe 16, whispered that she was helping her mother plan an escape. Your story makes me believe it's possible, she said. That sentence wrapped around my heart like sunlight. Deep breath. Softly. Later that evening, during the award ceremony, they handed me a glass plaque. It felt fragile in my hands, but what I felt inside was strong. As the crowd stood to applaud, I noticed someone near the back of the room. Owen. He had flown in without telling me. When our eyes met, he nodded slightly. Not as Wallace's son, but as a man who chose differently. That was when I realized something profound. Legacy is not what is done to you. It is what you choose to do next. Deep breath. Softly. On the flight home, I stared out the window at the clouds below. For decades, my story had been a wound. Now it was a bridge. When we landed, a message was waiting for me. Haven Hollow had just received a major federal grant. Enough to expand into 2 additional counties. 2 more safe places. 2 more doors. I sat in my seat for a moment after the announcement. 83. And still building. Still growing. Still planting. Deep breath. Softly. When we returned to Cedar Hollow, the women at Haven Hollow had decorated the entrance with flowers and handmade signs. Welcome home, Rebecca. Thank you for fighting. I felt embarrassed and honored all at once. Talia hugged me tightly. You changed my life, she said again. No, I corrected gently. You changed your own life. I just opened a door. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in my rocking chair. The same chair where this chapter of my story began. The maple trees swayed gently in the breeze. I thought about Wallace. About Delilah. About the child I lost. About the child who lived. About the 19-year-old girl who once believed she had no one. She had no idea what she would become. Deep breath. Softly. There was only one thing left to do. One final act that would seal everything. I had decided weeks earlier after standing in that kitchen. But now it felt right. The farm would not carry my name forever. After I am gone, Haven Hollow will belong to the women it serves. A survivor-led board will control it. Not my family. Not any one person. It will never again be controlled by a single voice. Especially not a man's. That is the kind of ending I want. But there is still one final chapter. One final scene that ties the past to the present in a way even I did not expect. Because a few days after the conference, I received another visitor. A young woman. With auburn hair. And gray eyes. The young woman stood at the edge of the Haven Hollow garden, twisting her hands together. Auburn hair. Gray eyes. For a second my breath caught. She looked so much like Delilah that time folded in on itself. Deep breath. Softly. I walked toward her slowly. Can I help you, dear? She swallowed. Are you Rebecca Daniel? Her voice trembled slightly. My name is Lillian Hargrove. Hargrove. The world felt very still. Delilah's last name. I nodded gently. What brings you here, Lillian? She looked around at the cottages, the playground, the women tending flowers. My grandmother was Delilah Hargrove. The name settled softly between us. She passed away years ago. My mother told me stories about this place before it even existed. About you. Your grandmother and I. We shared a complicated history. Lillian gave a small, understanding smile. She said that. She said you were both young and trapped in different ways. Deep breath. Softly. She reached into her purse and pulled out an old photograph. It was faded at the edges. In it stood a younger version of Delilah, heavily pregnant. Beside her, a tiny boy of about 5 years old. And in the background, barely visible, the old Whitmore farmhouse. That's my Uncle Owen, she explained. My grandmother eventually told my mom the truth. About Wallace. About what he planned to do to you. I studied the photo carefully. Time is strange. It carries secrets quietly for decades. Why are you here, Lillian? She hesitated. 'Cause I think our family owes you something. You don't owe me anything. Her eyes filled with emotion. My grandmother always said you were the bravest woman she ever knew. She said if you had not exposed Wallace, she might never have found the courage to disappear and raise Owen safely. Her words wrapped around my heart. I had never known that. Your strength protected more than just you, she said softly. Deep breath. Softly. Tears gathered in my eyes, but they were not heavy tears. They were light. For years I thought of that chapter as pure loss. But standing here now I could see something different. My survival had rippled outward, like stones thrown into water. Lillian continued. I work with a legal aid organization in Chicago. I help women file protective orders. When I heard you speak at the summit last week, I knew I had to meet you. You were there. In the back. Smiled. I suppose our lives have been circling each other for a long time. She nodded. Think they have. We walked slowly through Haven Hollow together. Past the counseling rooms. Past the childcare center. Past the plaque at the entrance that read, Haven Hollow. Built from survival. Sustained by strength. Deep breath. Softly. As we stood near the garden, children ran past us laughing. The sound was bright. Alive. Lillian looked at me carefully. Do you ever regret any of it? I thought about that question deeply. Regret is complicated. I regret the pain. I regret the baby I lost. But I do not regret the woman I became because of it. She nodded slowly. I hope to become even half as strong as you. You already are, I replied. Strength does not arrive loudly. Grows quietly. Just like this place did. We stood together as the sun began to set. Orange lights stretched across the fields that once held corn and secrets. Now they held safety. Deep breath. Softly. That evening, after Lillian left, I gathered everyone at Haven Hollow. Volunteers. Residents. Owen stood near the back. Marin sat in the front row with my grandchildren. I took a steady breath. There is something I want you all to know, I began. This place was born from pain. But it does not belong to pain anymore. Belongs to you. I explained the trust one had finalized. After I am gone, Haven Hollow will be run entirely by survivors and advocates. No single person will ever control it. It will always be a shared voice. A murmur of emotion moved through the crowd. Owen stepped forward. You built this, Rebecca. No, I corrected gently. We built this. The scared girl I once was. The brave women who walked through these doors. The children who found laughter again. Even the broken past that tried to silence me. All of it built this. Deep breath. Softly. Later that night, alone on my porch, I rocked gently under the stars. The maple trees swayed like they always do. 83 years. So many chapters. So many storms. I thought about Wallace one last time. Not with anger. Not even with sadness. Just distance. He believed power came from control. He was wrong. Real power is quiet. Survives. Transforms. It plants gardens where someone once planned harm. And it outlives the hands that tried to crush it. Deep breath. Softly. If my story moved you tonight, if it reminded you that strength can rise from the darkest moments, I want you to stay connected with this community. Subscribe so you never miss another story of resilience. like this video so it can reach someone who might need hope. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I read them. Care. We are building something together, one voice at a time. Because somewhere, a young woman is sitting in a quiet house, believing she has no one. And maybe, just maybe, hearing this story will help her stand up. I lost my first baby. But I did not lose myself. And in the end, that made all the difference.
And before we close, I want you to know that Grandma Rebecca Daniel herself gave me the courage and audacity to share her story with the world so that no woman will ever feel alone again. Thank you.